This presentation, titled Auditing Protocols Specific to Food Manufacturers, comes to us from Nancy Nouaimeh. Nancy is an accomplished chartered business excellence and total quality management professional with more than 18 years of experience and a proven record of significant achievements. She holds a master's degree in TQM and agronomic sciences and bioengineering. In her current job as AVP, Quality, Safety, and Performance Excellence at a leading food services management company in Dubai, Nancy leads improvement projects through innovative and integrative approaches. She's an expert in ISO standards and auditing, ISO 22000, ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and ISO 45001. She is also a subject matter expert, senior assessor, and judge for National Excellence, Innovation, and Quality Professional Awards. And with that, take it away, Nancy.
Michael, thank you very much for this nice introduction. It's my pleasure to be here today presenting at Exemplar Global Food Safety Expo. As Michael has presented to you, my background includes different expertise, and that's what I will try to bring it to you through this presentation on the protocols specific to food manufacturers. I will try to combine the quality part, food safety part, quality management concepts and tools into this presentation. So thank you very much for watching. What we will cover today is mainly three different things. One, we're starting with the trends in food safety and quality, the current things that we see happening in our world today, the auditing system in the food industry, and how a process approach could help us a lot to improve on what we are doing when it comes to auditing in the food manufacturing. So the third part would be basically focusing on the continuous improvement part. When we hear food safety and food quality in the news is mainly related to problems, crises, scandals. And when we really consider those two elements, food safety and food quality, there's very limited differentiation between both. But when it comes to consumer point of view, there's a lot of things, different things that are considered in each of the areas. So these scandals could be prevented. These are things that companies sometimes intentionally or intentionally get involved in, but there are definitely a lot of ways to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. And the auditing function in the food manufacturing is basically to make sure that the food companies are compliant with whatever systems they commit to comply to, the standards in place, and they are sure that they're really providing safe and quality food to consumers. So let me move now to the current trends in food safety and in food quality. As a quality professional and someone who's working in the food industry, and many of you, I think, in the same position, we've seen in the last years increased number of food safety and quality standards from BRC to FSSC to ISF. So there's a lot of quality standards out there that could help companies achieve compliance to international requirements of consumers, food safety, quality, and all what the company is willing to achieve. In addition to these standards, there's something from a consumer point of view. They're starting to look at the inner working of organizations, looking at how organizations are treating the workforce. We're looking at implementing labor standards, environmental standards, certification for animal welfare, how companies are really sourcing products that really are considering the animal welfare elements in how they are sourcing. So there's a lot of things that have been added in terms of requirement in the past years to what we look for in terms of food safety and quality standards. And the offering is huge. So if you want to choose a standard to follow, you might be having 100 questions and to be able to compare these standards and which one suits you. If you look at the BRC, for example, it's a prescriptive gives you prescription, detailed procedures and guidelines to follow. But if you want really to look at a framework that helps you implement your own systems when it comes to food safety and quality, you will follow the FSSC. And I'll be talking a little bit after about the food fraud thing. So there are different things. Companies needs to be aware, auditors needs to be aware, and anyone involved in this process needs to be aware of what are the differences and what's the best standard to use. So the current trends and the current availabilities of standards outside really push us to dig deep into understanding the differences before we take any decision on this. There's an increase in the requirement of both second-party and third-party auditing also. If you are a manufacturer working in the global market, you would have seen also a lot of changes in the requirement when it comes to second-party, third-party auditing, and requirement to control better the supply chain. Use of technology and remote audits. I think many of us have been exposed to the need to move to remote audits in the past years. Now, the COVID has accelerated this a lot, and for months we were not able to do other than remote audits. And that's why we saw a lot of changes in the technologies out there that supports remote auditing. And like wearable technology, smart glasses, which allows companies to be, or auditors to be even doing a remote audit from distance. Having someone without a auditing background, even in the shop floor, helping to just to have a visual representation of the work, but at the same time, they have no expertise in this. So the auditor who's very far from the audited side could really guide that person through smart glasses and get the information he needs and be able to do a good inspection. So these are technologies that helped a lot the performance of remote audits. And the QR codes, for example, if you use a QR code on your equipment, this will help you get really a deep or a detailed listing of the equipment, the functionalities, and all what you need to do and to know when you are auditing a facility. The certification bodies, there's a lot of competition out there. There has been less differentiation over the years between the work performed by these certification bodies because they have to follow the same standard. At a certain point, they needed to look at how to differentiate themselves and providing more value to training, technology, data-driven insights, which help on our organization get business intelligence, use the data which is out there for benchmarking purposes or gap analysis. One important element which I would like to add is the quality assurance, which is now an essential element within the global food industry. And I will try to share some examples and some tips moving forward. That one additional thing which really impacted everybody's work in the past year is the COVID. And here we look at how health and safety and food safety had to be integrated together in food manufacturing to make sure that the right controls are in place, to make sure the operation continues and that there's no negative impact on the health of workers and subsequently impact on the quality, on the food safety operation. So site readiness assessments are critical, and this is something which all food manufacturing considered, I think, in 2020 and moving in 2021. Now, let me move on a little bit to the auditing system. I think that we all experienced the auditing procedures for a long time before we moved to auditing systems. Now here, I'm gonna cover some elements which are both important for internal and external audits, except maybe maintaining impartiality. When we think about the auditing system, we really need to think in a holistic way and make sure that there are no conflicts of interest, internal or external. We look at the people who are involved in the auditing process, and I'll be talking a little bit about the competence of auditors in a while. Very critical when we are doing external audits and even internal audits is the confidentiality. When we are working in food manufacturing, we might be dealing with B2B, having B2B relations, and confidentiality is really critical to make sure that no one from the people involved in the process, intentionally or unintentionally, breaches confidentiality agreements. Identifying changes in the food business or its food handling and the implication for auditing. So this is also very important to always keep abreast of the changes in the food business, technical, not technical standards, everything that could impact the food safety system and the auditing system. Auditing personnel is really critical. Without the competence of auditors, I don't think we'll be able to get good outcome from the auditing process. So this is something that needs to be considered when we establish auditing systems. We need to have a good process in place to identify auditors, to identify any conflict of interest, to make sure that they have the right continuous training, to make sure that they keep up to date with the changes in the food business. Procedures for auditors, from a quality standpoint, it's very important that auditors have the right tools, the right methodologies, and the right procedures to be able to follow consistently and deliver consistent results from one audit to another, whether internally or externally. Moving also on the auditing system, so dealing with appeals, complaints, and dispute, this is something that needs to be well designed, well defined, well documented, and to make sure that also best results are obtained when it comes to audits, appeals, complaints, and disputes. Internally, this is less important than externally, but also internally, we see sometimes conflicts. I'll be talking about the cross-functional teams. Sometimes we see internal conflicts when an auditor brings a point in the audit closing talking about something that could be directly related to a colleague or another department, and then we can see here some disputes happening. Regular reviews of the management system, of the auditing management system, like any system, you need to have the right elements in place to manage your system. And I'll be a little bit touching here the PDCA cycle. So you need to plan, do, check, and act. And from a quality point, I mean, even now the PDCA is as the core of the ISO standards. So you need to have that methodology in place to make sure that your auditing system is always providing the best outcome. And you need to make sure that you're reviewing the system itself. Documentation and records, I think this goes without explanation. Changes to requirements is also very important to capture. And when we talk about any change in any system, I just want to highlight that it's very important to consider the change element and to consider at managing the change, whether it's an internal change or an external change. And having a certain methodology in place, we have a documented procedure in our system for change management, because it's very important to understand the change, to plan for it, to implement it, and to communicate it finally. And you need a certain expertise here also on change management. It's not enough to document, like for anything else, it's not enough to document your change management procedure. You should be able to have the right implementation and have the right team to work on it to make sure that you are really achieving the best result when you implement any change. And I'll be talking a little bit about the culture in a while also. Now, the objectives of food safety, I would, for us, I mean, we look at it from 3 different angles. First one is to review the system and evaluate the controls implemented. And this is critical from a food safety point of view. The other one is really to make sure that we have identified any gaps, we have identified improvements needed, and especially using some quality analytical tools and quality assurance to make sure that our system remains relevant and our system remains performing to its best abilities. So these are things that really are important. So once we do a review and once we do a re-evaluation of what we are doing, we jump to the improvement part, and I'll be talking in the third part about improvements, because without having that improvement, I don't think the auditing system will be giving the right value to the organization. Auditing gives a 360 view to what's going on in the organization, and that view helps really identifying the areas that needs to be tackled. And one key thing which is for us is very important is establishing a food safety culture. I'm not talking about quality here, but we had a survey done in our company for several years, and we demonstrated that once you start establishing or focusing on one element of the culture, and here I'm talking about food safety, this will immediately have a positive impact on other elements like quality, health and safety, and everything you're doing. So by having the right culture in place, you help any other system in an organization to perform well. And the culture is really critical. And I'll be talking a little bit about how people impact the culture in the organization and why it's important to focus on that, and how having a good auditing system in place helps that finally, and vice versa. Having a good culture will help the auditors and the auditing program achieve better results. And just without going into too much details here, the audited elements when it comes to food safety and food quality are listed here on the slide. So we're talking about quality systems. As we know, the ISO 22000 has a big portion of its requirement covering quality requirements, the document control on the documentation that you have in place, internal, external, all the documents, pest management to make sure that we don't have any contamination within the facility, water and hygiene, quality of the water, the hygiene, corrective and preventive actions, chemicals handling and control is very important for food safety to make sure that there's no risk to the food, because the chemicals has to be really well controlled and well handled to make sure that it doesn't present any danger to consumers. Purchasing and vendor approval, in my opinion, this is really critical. If you don't control your vendors, you will definitely have a problem keeping the quality of your products. And we've seen, like I spoke initially, we've seen a lot of changes in or increased requirements when it comes to second-party auditing. And internally, we have to start by having a good program in place to approve suppliers who really help us achieve our objectives, our food safety and quality objectives. And that's why also when it comes to the auditing team, having that function part of the auditing team is very important. So good laboratory practices, good manufacturing practices, food safety, HACCP, calibration, increase now. The one thing which is became very important is the allergen controls, even at restaurant levels. Even because it's a need by the consumers. You see now on the menus of restaurants, it's very visually represented where the allergens are, which dish contains allergens, and it's really a requirement. And that has to start from the manufacturing itself. So you need to identify the allergens, make sure that you're, if you are claiming to be allergen-free facility, to make sure that you control that and make sure you really deliver on your promise. We have, like I said, increased, we've seen the increase in the importance of quality assurance and the final product controls and the food manufacturing at different levels. We're talking here about manufacturing, but it's also at catering levels and at different, because we have seen a lot of changes in the consumer habits also, and now there's a lot of new market which has opened for ready-to-eat products and these kind of things. So this really created a different dimension and thing when it comes to quality assurance. Traceability, sanitation, food defense, food fraud. We had lately started on the FSSC certification. And then when you look at the food fraud, it's very important also to consider the practices within the organization. And all of these needs to be audited. And when you have very well established procedures and documented guidelines and flowcharts, this will help the auditor from outside, and you have identified all of the risks in these areas. This will help the auditor understand what's going on in the organization, how things are set and established and implemented, and make sure that there are no gaps in this entire process. Education and training, when we're talking about culture, education and training becomes really a critical element. You cannot really have a food safety culture in place if you don't really work hard on your education programs, on your training programs. And I put here the Simon Sinek small why, how, and what, and you have to start with the why. We saw a big change in the mindset of our employees and the way in their behaviors and the way they started approaching food safety when we changed our way of education and training. And we started involving them in the process and explaining to them the why and the consequences of what they're doing. It's not just to tell people, this is what you need to do, these are the guidelines you need to follow. You need to make sure that they understand what they're doing and they are able to understand the consequences of not doing what needs to be done. So it's very important. Education and training are very important for an organization. And this immediately could be seen in an audit. Once you are an auditor, you go to a facility and you ask questions, you got the right answers. This could be immediately evident and evidence of the good education programs they have in place and the involvement of workers in what they're doing. Now, I'm not going into too much details here. This is an example of our process and our processes and the controls we try to have in place and the things we look at when we do internal auditing of our processes. So we look at the sourcing, we look at the receiving part, the production controls and measures we have in place, the storing, the dispatch, and we have different procedures in place, and the auditor finds it easy to really understand what we're doing in each of these areas. So having good system in place and having a process approach to things help really the auditing process and help the auditors really find improvement areas for the organization. I want to jump now to the integration of systems. it's critical. I was talking a little bit about the competence of auditors. It's critical really to have a multidisciplinary team in an organization: food safety, quality, purchasing, engineering, and operations. I'm going to focus mainly food safety. It's clear why food safety has to be there in a food safety auditing team. The two important things which sometimes we overlook is the purchasing and operations. Purchasing, they need to have a better understanding of the operations. They need to be able to look at the cost effectiveness when it comes to food safety decisions in purchasing. And the operations part. The operation really gives you a look at what's going on in the ground, and they are really the connection with the operations. So from our side, we have two levels of integration: one in the design of the process and one in the auditing. So we have a multidisciplinary team who really looks at all the procedures, the processes in place, and it's an integrated system, which we have all the elements covered in one system finally: QHSE, food safety, and other elements also, which are not directly related to this. And the integration helps really have a better connectivity and a better understanding of how things work together, and especially when it comes to the day-to-day operation, and when you have people who are handling different functions and interacting on regular basis. Just quickly, I'll share with you the process turtle model. It's very important for the auditing process to understand mainly two elements: the support processes, the linkages to other individuals and departments, and the measures and the indicators you have in place, and the procedures, the records, and the actions to be taken. So once you have this laid down in a clear way, and using the turtle model, this really helps any auditor, internal or external, be able to identify the day-to-day activities and how these are interrelated, how they impact each other, and go to a second level of interactions when it comes to objectives and comes to performance indicators. So that understanding really helps identifying the critical areas that needs to be looked at, helps identifying the things that need to be considered for improvement, and really helps getting a meaningful and audit, and finally findings that are really helping the company improve. Now, without going into the details, just any process would require a flow chart. We could go for classical schematic flow charts, but the most important thing is that they cover the required areas and gives visibility on the flow of people, product, rework, high risk, low risk area, storage and distribution areas, the process delays when it comes from a quality assurance point of view, and process capabilities, looking at the outsourced and subcontracted processes. So flow charts really gives a good visual representation of all of these things. And this is a good aid for auditor, whether internal or external, because it really helps identifying, really the practices on site, making a comparison of the practical things and what has been put on paper, and make sure that everybody's following what has been designed initially for the process and the system. Audits and actions. Now we move here to the real audit. We move a little bit. We talked a little bit at the high level about the audit elements, about the audit management system, and the competence of auditors. I will dig deep a little bit into the audits and what are the important things to look at. I want to go back a little bit to the auditors and the competence of auditors, whether internally or externally conducted. The auditors have to have a multidisciplinary expertise, definitely. But sometimes if you have people who are too much specialized in an area, they give more weight to that area. So that's why it's important to have a really multidisciplinary team who have different expertise, competent enough to look at all the elements in the system, especially for organizations, for food manufacturers who are very complex. They have multiple lines of products. You will need maybe different expertise to be brought to the audit team. And when you have that multidisciplinary function, it really helps create a balance and make sure that the weightage is given in the right way to every part of the process and every line of products. From a practical point of view, when we conduct audits, we really try to understand how the food safety management system works, the team performance. Like I said earlier, we look at the consistency in answers, the knowledge, the culture around, and we look at how things are aligned within the organization, alignment of approved policies, objective procedures, records, and how everything has been implemented, measured, and at the same time improved. So we apply the PDCA cycle also when we do the audit itself. Effectiveness and efficiencies of processes. This is very critical when we are doing an audit, to keep an eye on this, to make sure that we are really looking at processes and the performance of these processes. Now, I'm not talking to do a performance audit here, but a good auditor would really look at these things. It's not just to look at a paper and say, okay, they're doing this or they're not doing it. It's really to have a kind of deeper look into, are they really doing, or especially internally, are we doing the right things? Are we really connecting things in a right way? And do we have the right integrations? Do we have designed things in the right way? So this is really very important. Auditors need to be knowledgeable of that. And when you have, I didn't talk much about the quality function in the first, I mean, when I was talking about the audit team and who should be involved in the audit process, but definitely having a quality person in that team would be very important to make sure that we reach to the improvement part of required from the audit function. Weakness and critical processes. So this is one of the things that will be looked at always, is to identify the weak links and the focus on the critical processes, especially when it comes from a HACCP point of view. So it's really important to look at where are the weak links in the process and what are the things that will have jeopardize the food safety and quality finally. The continuous improvement part, it's very important. I've mentioned it so many times in my presentation. Here I really would like to focus on two things mainly, is the root cause analysis and the use of techniques like the 5 whys or the cause and effect diagram and similar techniques for the root cause analysis. If you don't do good root cause analysis internally when you have identified non-conformities, I think you won't be able to find the right corrective action to put in place or correction to put in place. So it's very important to focus on root cause analysis. We're having some issues be able to reach to that point with our workforce, because mainly it's hard for them to, even with training, it's hard for them maybe to understand how deep they need to go when they do the root cause analysis. And this is one thing which requires a lot of training, requires coaching, requires on-the-job training, working with employees to make sure that they go deep into the root cause analysis. Doing that from an office point of view behind a desk could help, but it's not really enough on its own. So that's one thing which really needs to be really perfected in an organization when it comes to continuous improvement. And definitely you have the entire process of continuous improvement, follow up on the root cause with the reflective corrective action, use the audit as a real-time training tool. This is very important when you want to focus on the continuous improvement culture in your organization. The audit could be used, whether internal or external, as a real-time training tool to make sure that people finally gets to the improvement part and understand like I said, the root cause of the problem and how best should be resolved. Validate that changes instituted are based on science and technology. We should really, I think, focus on science and technology when we design any change due to the recommendation from any audit. It should be really based on demonstration that this is the best solution to be implemented. Verify the corrective actions in place, alter the food safety plan as needed, and mention the why. It's very important when we do any changes to link it to a valid reason and to demonstrate how it's going to impact or sort the problem. Go back and test the system again with a follow-up audit. This is really the last part when we want to really demonstrate that we did the right improvement and we achieved the improvement that we wanted to complete. So just coming to the end of this presentation, just to summarize a little bit, quality and food safety goes hand by hand in the food industry. And we have technical skills for auditors and now knowledge and expertise that needs to be deployed. But one of the important things, especially when we talk about internal audit, is to really be able to have a good system in place that helps achieve improvements finally. So you need to involve different people. You need to focus on the soft skills also of the auditing and the requirement of that part. And mainly you need to work with your workforce to make sure that finally the workforce is being involved in this by implementing the right changes for the organization. And you have to have a good culture in place. And like I said, the culture helps both ways, helps you improve food safety and quality in your organization. In the same time, food safety and quality and the auditing process itself should help you have a better culture in place. And this is where the collaboration, the integration, and the cross-functional teams, when they work together, they really help organization get to that point. So I come to the end of my presentation. I hope it was useful, and I would like to thank you for watching, and I would like to thank again Exemplar Global for this opportunity. Thank you very much. Michael?
Thank you, Nancy Nouaimeh, for that very fine look at best practices and protocols in food safety auditing. And that concludes this presentation.